Hey Lake Point, Pastor Michael here to get you caught up on the third week of our series, The Vow. Now let's be honest, marriage is tough, and so this series is meant to be an investment in your marriage, or perhaps if you're single, your future marriage. And this week was all about the vow of partnership. Have you ever heard the saying, opposites attract? I mean, of course you have. Well, what's interesting is that after you're married, this weird thing happens where over time, all the differences you used to find cute, charming, and endearing, all the things that originally attracted you to your spouse in the first place, all of a sudden become not cute and not charming and, quite frankly, pretty off-putting. And so here's the reality that a lot of married couples know to be true. When you're dating, opposites attract, and then when you're married, opposites attack. Opposites tend to attract, and then later on they often attack. And the reality is, in all of our relationships, and especially our marriages, Satan wants to use our differences to divide us. Satan wants to use our differences to drive us apart and leave us dissatisfied and disappointed in our significant other. However, God wants to use those same differences to actually strengthen us. God wants to use our differences to complement and enhance our marriage relationships. However, in order to do that, it requires a shift in our perspective. It requires us to choose the vow of partnership, and it requires us to promise that our marriage will all be about we and not about me. Because from the moment you say till death do us part, your life is no longer about me. Your life is about we together, us serving and glorifying God. Now, in the book of Genesis, we find God's blueprint for marriage. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 reads, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." And in the book of Matthew, Jesus quotes this exact verse, and then he adds some additional truth to it. In Matthew 19, verse 6, Jesus says, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." Now, a bit of a history lesson to help you appreciate what's going on here. You see, divorce was rampant in Jesus' days as it is in ours. And so the Pharisees, they come to Jesus, and in today's language, they're asking the question, is God ever okay with divorce? And if so, when? You see, there had been a debate raging for centuries over an obscure text in the Torah. In Deuteronomy, Moses wrote, if a man marries a woman who becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, he can write her a certificate of divorce. Now, the phrase, something indecent, in Hebrew is the phrase ervat davar, and it's just as ambiguous in the original language as it sounds in English. What did Moses mean by something indecent? It's a great question, and there were two sides to the debate. On the one side was the school of Shammai. He said that there was one and only one reason a man could divorce his wife, adultery. He taught that the bond of marriage could only be broken with the hammer of infidelity. That was his interpretation of something indecent. And unsurprisingly, Shammai's interpretation was the minority view. On the other side was the school of Hillel, and Hillel said a man could divorce his wife for any and every reason. As crazy as it sounds, we actually have records of Hillel's teachings where he says things like, if she burns the toast, ervat davar, divorce her. Now, for obvious reasons, Hillel's take was by far the popular majority view, especially among the men. In fact, Hillel's interpretation was so widespread it was called the any and every reason clause, and it was written on first century marriage certificates. And so what the Pharisees are essentially asking Jesus is, where do you stand on divorce? With Hillel or with Shammai? Like, what is your take? And Jesus' response is, you're asking the wrong question. And so Jesus reminds them of God's original intention for marriage. One man and one woman coming together and committing to each other for one lifetime. And when Jesus says, what God has joined together, let no man separate, what he's really saying is, stop asking, how can I get out of this? And start asking, what do I need to do to stay in this? What do I need to do to make this marriage, this partnership, everything God has always intended it to be? Marriage isn't about finding your missing half. It's not about finding that perfect person or someone who's going to make you perpetually happy. That person doesn't exist. Marriage is about two broken people coming together and finding healing in Jesus. Marriage is about finding someone you want to partner with and helping them love and live more and more like Jesus for the rest of your life. And that partnership is a covenant. It's not a contract. So often people say marriage is just a piece of paper, implying that marriage is just a contract. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant, a covenant made to another person before a holy God. And so, what's the major difference? Well, a contract is based on mutual distrust. And in other words, since I don't know you well enough to take you at your word, I'm going to make you sign a piece of paper to say that you're going to live up to your end of the deal. I mean, if you're watching this and you own rental properties, I assume you have your tenants sign a contract. And the reason you have them sign a contract is that you don't know those people. And if they don't pay, they can't stay. Now, on the flip side, if you don't keep the house in adequate condition, then your tenant can come back against you and take you to court. It's a contract built on mutual distrust. A covenant, though, is entirely different. A covenant isn't based on mutual distrust. A covenant is based on mutual commitment. We are both in 100%. Everything we are, everything we have, we are in. When you marry somebody, what you're saying is, I'm in 100% from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, I will be faithful to you as long as we both shall live, so help me God. I'm going to fulfill my end of the bargain, even if you don't do a good job of fulfilling yours. Marriage is not about dividing everything in half, it's about giving everything that you've got. And what's more, the partnership of marriage is based on godly leadership and mutual submission. Whenever the Apostle Paul talks about marriage, he actually starts with submitting to one another. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21 reads, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." It's not a one-way street. Now, you might be thinking, but doesn't Paul call men to be the leaders of the home? And that's true, he does say leaders. However, he doesn't call them dictators. And so for any of the men watching this recap, do you know what it means to lead? It means you set the spiritual tone for your families. It means you recognize and you honor the massive contributions of your significant other. It means you lean on the strengths of your wife and you submit to her wisdom. It means you lead with dignity and character, and it means that you serve first. The partnership in marriage is based on godly leadership and mutual submission. Now, here's the thing. There will be times when you don't feel like it. I don't feel like loving, I don't feel like forgiving, I don't feel like continuing with this partnership. And my advice to you would be this, as harsh as it may sound, get over your feelings. Your marriage is not measured by feelings, your marriage is measured by commitment. Because marriage is a covenant, it's a partnership with both parties, where both parties are in 100%. And both parties are flawed human beings, but you're committed to seeing each other become everything God intends you to be. And here's the good news. Feelings will follow commitment when you stay committed. Sociological studies have proven that when you continue to act lovingly towards someone, eventually your feelings of love towards that person will reignite. Getting divorced because you ran out of love is like selling your car because you ran out of gas. What do you do when you run out of gas? You fill it back up. What do you do when you run out of love? Well, when you're in a marriage, when you're in a covenant, you fill it back up. You work on it over and over and over again. You fill it back up because this isn't about me, it's all about we. A covenant, a mutual commitment before a holy God, a partnership rooted in godly leadership and mutual submission. Well, friend, consider yourselves caught up. Enjoy jumping into discussion questions. I'll see you next time.